I came downstairs, and she was still there. 200 cockroaches in a perfect circle around her feet. Not one of them had moved. Jessica stood in the center of the road with her head tilted back, looking up at my window. The settled stillness of someone who stopped waiting a long time ago and is simply occupying time until you arrive. The carved object in her hands was identical to mine. Same grooves, same warmth that had nothing to do with her body. The cockroaches didn't react when I walked out, not to the door, not to my footsteps. They weren't watching us. They were oriented toward something that outranked both of us. I stopped 3 feet from her. She wasn't my enemy. I understood that the moment I saw her eyes, gray-templed, ancient, carrying the same thing I'd been catching in my own mirror for weeks. She was my mirror. And whatever lived behind both our faces had finally stopped pretending to be us. "How long?" I asked. "Longer than you." She looked at me the way you look at someone you recognize from a dream, right before the recognition turns into dread. "Mine started at 14, wasps. I thought I was just strange." "You never knew what it meant." "I knew something, not the word for it." A pause. "You're less afraid than you were last week." "I know." "That's not growth," she said. "That's removal." Her eyes had that quality I'd been catching in my own mirror, something old sitting just behind the iris. Something that had worn many faces and found them all temporary. "The mantis left me a number," I said. 90 days. It told me 63. I have 9 left. 9 days. I felt the shape of that not with fear, but with the hollow place where fear used to live. A room someone had emptied overnight. "One vessel breaks," she said quietly. "The other absorbs the weight. I break first, everything transfers to you. And when you break, someone new is already being shaped." No bitterness, flat like a weather report. It has been this way for a long time. I looked at the object in her hands. She looked at the one in mine. 2 keys, 1 lock. "Come upstairs," I said. Claire came that afternoon. She stood in the doorway, looked at Jessica sitting at my desk, and everything she'd rehearsed fell apart in a single expression. "Julia," just my name carrying everything. "She bullied you for 2 years. Claire's voice was a wire pulled too tight. "She posted that photo. She called you Roach Girl in front of 100 people, and she's sitting at your desk." "She's the same as me," I said. "Same how?" "Same system, same curse, same problem." "I submitted a formal statement," she said. "About you. The dean's office wants you in for an interview." "I know." "I did it because you stopped feeling like you." Her voice cracked just barely. "I didn't know what else to do. I think it made things worse." I looked at her, the person who had sat with me in silence when that was what I needed. Who had brought tea as an excuse to say the true thing. Who had said come back in a hallway like she believed it was still possible. Something moved in my chest. The old way, the Julia way. "You were the last person who saw me clearly," I said. Her eyes got wet. "Past tense," she said softly. She hugged me at the door, something brief and careful. The kind that means goodbye without saying the word. I closed the door. On the floor near my foot, a single ant stopped moving. It didn't send me anything. No words, no feeling. It just sat there, witnessing. That was somehow the worst part. It started small. I forgot my grandparents' address. Not the tired kind of forgetting, the deleted kind. Like pressing your tongue to the space where a tooth was and finding nothing. I wrote it on 3 pieces of paper and put them in 3 different pockets. 2 days later, I forgot my first day of primary school. Not the facts, the feeling of it, the smell of chalk, the nervous brightness of being somewhere new and completely yourself. Gone, deleted. Then, walking home from an exam I'd finished in 40 minutes and aced without thinking, I forgot what my grandpa's laugh sounded like. I stopped on the pavement, reached for it, the wheeze at the end, the way it always grew past what it started as and found the right shape with nothing inside. A husk. I called him. He picked up on the second ring. "My Julia," still that brightness. "I just wanted to hear you," I said. I'm here. I'm always here. He laughed at his own sentence, nervous about me, the wheeze. The way it grew. I pressed the phone against my ear and held it, filed it somewhere I could find it. Then it slipped. That night I woke at 2 a.m. and couldn't remember Claire's last name. I lay in the dark for a long time. I did not write it down. Day 81. I woke with my hand on the window latch, already there. Fingers already turned, window already open 2 inches, morning cold already on my face. No memory of crossing the room. My eyes were open. My body had been awake and purposeful. I just hadn't been the one directing it. Jessica found me standing there. She'd been sleeping on my floor, an arrangement that had developed without discussion. 2 people finding it easier to be strange together than separately. She put a hand on my shoulder. Julia. My hand released the latch on its own. I sat on the bed and told myself it was dissociation, extreme stress, a known psychological phenomenon with a name and a literature. I held that explanation for most of the morning. That afternoon, sitting in the garden, my right hand reached into my coat pocket and took out the carved object. I had not decided to do that. My hand placed it on the bench. Then it returned to my lap, calm, like something completing a task. From below the bench, from the soil, from the roots, from whatever system I'd been pretending was separate from me, an image came up. A deep underground chamber, roots and ancient stone and dark, something sealed at the center, pressurized, patient. A door that hadn't been opened in centuries. Doors have 2 sides. The thing on the other side had never once stopped pressing. Day 84, midnight. The boy from the library confrontation lived across the courtyard. I didn't know his name. He had come because he was afraid, because fear is easier in a group. His light was on. He was at his desk, back turned, studying normal. His window was entirely covered in moths. Hundreds of them, wings flat against the glass, completely still. A living wall. He hadn't noticed yet. No, I said, stop. They didn't stop. He is a threat to the vessel. The vessel must continue. I am the vessel. You were the vessel. What you are now is something larger than Julia. I grabbed my coat and went across the cold courtyard. I closed my eyes and reached for the mechanism, the one that had worked in the library, the one that had worked in the hallway. Found it. But it was further now, the way a light switch is further when your arm is broken. I pushed hard. The moths dissolved. 1 second a black wall, the next just a window, yellow light inside. He turned around, saw me alone in the courtyard at midnight, looking up. He pulled the blinds. Back in my room, something had written 1 word in the window: condensation. Soon. Hannah's handwriting. I wiped it off, lay in bed. I had protected him. That was right. But I'd had to fight to do it, and what had once been immediate now cost real effort. The next time would cost more. There would come a time when I reached and found nothing. I didn't sleep. Day 87. Grandma's voice was 1 note too bright. Julia, your grandpa is in hospital. The train took 3 hours. Jessica came without being asked and sat across the aisle and didn't speak, which was exactly correct. Grandpa was in a ward bed. He'd always seemed large to me, not physically, but present, the kind of man who fills a room just by being in it. Now he looked turned down, the volume of him reduced. He saw me and his face did the thing, the huge, overwhelmed, bursting thing. My Julia, he said. I sat beside him, held his hand. I let my face do what it needed. They're fussing, he said. That's what they're paid for. He laughed, the wheeze at the end. I pressed it into whatever part of me was still mine and held on, knowing I was holding something that wouldn't stay. Grandma put a photograph on the blanket between us. Old, black and white, a woman in a garden holding the carved object, my carved object. My grandmother, she said. She gave it to me, said to pass it to my daughter. I had no daughter, so I kept it. Gray at both temples, that expression not peace, decision. She walked into the river one morning, Grandma said quietly. Clear sky, no storm, they found her smiling. People said she gave herself for the harvest. A pause. I never believed that. I understood exactly what the woman had been doing. Not giving herself for crops, choosing. I had been moving toward the same choice, without the word for it. Grandma, I need to tell you something. For a moment, I almost didn't. There was a version of that hour where I said nothing, sat with them, held his hand, let Grandma talk about doctors and medication, stayed inside the ordinary world where I was just their granddaughter and he was just sick, and that was the whole of the problem. I wanted that version badly. It was a small, human thing to want. I told them anyway. Everything, the mantis, the 90 days, Hannah and Nkosi, the long line of women shaped into vessels and burned through, the thing behind the door. Grandpa held my hand the entire time. His grip didn't change. When I finished, Grandma laid her hand over mine. What happens to you, she said, not a question. I didn't answer. Tell me what you need, she said. I told her the first vessel. Hannah, where she was buried, I thought she knew how to end it. Grandma said a name, a village in northern China, barely on any map. My grandmother told me, she said. She said when the girl comes who carries the mark, and you'll know her because the insects will follow her home, she'll need to find the first one. She let go of my hand. Your grandfather has been saving for years. We thought it was for university. A pause. Turns out it was for this. Grandpa died at 4 a.m. No final words. His breathing changed in the small hours, slower, then not at all. The room was exactly the same room except something essential had left it, and the space it left was vast. Grandma held his hand. I held hers. The moth on his windowsill had turned inward, toward him, toward us. The feeling it sent had no clean word. The closest was received, something noting that a thing had been witnessed and would not be forgotten. I held Grandma for a long time. Later, she pressed a folded paper into my palm, an address, her precise schoolteacher handwriting. Go, she said. I'll be here. I looked at her face, the face that had fed me and raised me and understood me even when I was incomprehensible, and I held it in my memory as carefully as I could. I have had a long, good life with that man, she said, and I raised you. Go and finish what she shaped our line to finish. I held her face in my hands. I memorized it. Then I left. Day 88, a train, my reflection in the dark window. I could not remember my middle name. Not forgotten, gone. I reached for it, the name my grandfather had chosen, the one Grandma had whispered over my head at birth, and found a clean gap, sealed over. Julia, I still had Julia, but Julia had stopped being an identity. It was a label now, a name on the side of a container that used to hold something. I looked at my reflection. For 3 full seconds, it wasn't performing. What looked back at me was old in a way that had nothing to do with age, patient in the way of stone, the expression of something that had outlasted everything it encountered and learned across centuries, that waiting was the only skill required. Then I blinked, my face snapped back. But I had seen what was underneath. Who am I? Not Julia, not Hannah, not Nkosi. Not any name from the long line. The answer was the lock. That was all that remained. The function. The girl who had arrived at university in a second-hand coat with hopeful eyes, who screamed at a cockroach and ran outside and been noticed, for the first time, by something ancient, she was almost gone. What was left was the thing she had been built to contain. I put my face in my hands and cried the way Julia would have cried. Not for everything I'd lost, for her specifically. The girl who had shown up with no idea what was waiting, who had been brave simply by arriving, who deserved so much better than this. I cried for 3 minutes. Then I wiped my face and sat up straight. And went to find the first one's grave. The village had been mostly swallowed by time. What remained were foundations, broken walls, and a temple that had outlasted everyone who built it. Trees so old their roots had broken through the original courtyard stones and were replacing them with something organic and permanent. We found the grave by following the insects. No drama, no columns or arrows. Just a quiet accumulation of small bodies beneath a tree at the far end of the grounds, whose roots had grown over something in the earth the way hands cup water. No headstone, no marker, a depression in the ground older than everything around it, deliberately forgotten. I crouched, put my palm flat against the earth. What came was rougher and older than anything I was used to. Less like receiving a message and more like receiving a life, all of it at once, without sequence, the way drowning arrives. I received it, all of it. Hannah's life complete, the books, the father, the brother, the winter, the years of captivity, the mantis, the curse, the death. And then the part I hadn't been given before, the part held back until now. The monk, kneeling beside her body, his voice low. The door can be closed from the inside. The debt can be paid, not through suffering, through choice. It will feel like the end of you, because it is. The only question is whether you choose it freely. I lifted my hand. There's a way to end it, I said. Not pass it to the next vessel, end the whole system. Jessica looked at me. I watched the understanding move through her face. The question, then the answer, then what the answer cost. Both of us, she said. Yes. What happens to us? I didn't answer. She nodded. She already knew. We sat in the ruined temple as the sun went down. I told her what Hannah's grave had given me. Not all of it. I wasn't sure I could reconstruct all of it. It was less like receiving information and more like having absorbed water. The shape was there, but when I tried to pour it out, it came out changed. The insects are a record, I said, of wrongs that went unanswered. The kind that leave no mark the world agrees to see. A child told she was worthless. A woman silenced in a room full of people who chose not to notice, accumulating since before anyone named them. That's what the pressure is. That's what's been pressing against the door. The vessel holds the door. When it breaks, the record passes to the next one. The world continues unaware. But if a vessel opens the door from the inside, chooses it, receives all of it willingly, the record passes through. The debt is paid. The door closes. It burns the vessel completely. How do you know it works? Jessica said, not really a question. I don't, I said. But the monk told Hannah. Hannah didn't try it. There was too little of her left by the time she understood. I looked at the object. Nkosi tried alone, half the weight. The system continued. And we're two. Yes, I think because the debt has never been this large. We sat with that. Outside, the sky had gone the deep blue of a night with no city to dilute it. Stars, cold and still and indifferent. 9 days ago, I would have let you do it alone, Jessica said. I would have found a reason, that it had to be you, that I was secondary. Her voice carried something worn smooth by being carried too long. I've always been good at finding reasons. Both of us, she said. I looked at her, the girl whose cruelty had been the thoughtless kind, which is the truest kind, because it shows you who someone is in the moment they forget to hide it. And now, in a ruined temple at the end of everything, making a clear choice with her eyes open. I don't know if I deserve to do this, she said quietly. I keep wondering if I'm choosing it because it's right, or because it's the version of myself I want to be. I thought about that. Maybe it doesn't matter, I said. Maybe you get to be that version and the reason doesn't. The bitterness in her face didn't leave entirely, but it settled into something that could live alongside a decision. Tomorrow, I said. Tomorrow, she agreed. I called Grandma from the temple steps. She picked up on the first ring. My Julia. I found what I came for, I said. A pause. Will you come home after? The word after did a lot of work in the air between us. I love you, I said. I know. Her voice was steady, the steadiness of a long life choosing itself one final time. He knew too. He always knew you were something beyond ordinary. He cried at everything, that man, but never the way someone cries when they don't understand. A pause, then quietly, "He is so proud." The correction of a woman, still deciding which tense is true. "No half measures," she said. "You never were good at those anyway." She laughed, small and real. I laughed too, because sometimes the only honest response to the unbearable is a small, real laugh. "Thank you," I said, "for raising me." "Thank you for letting me," she said. We stayed on the line without speaking, just her breathing and mine and the night air around the temple. Then we said goodbye. I sat on the stone steps, and I sat with a thought I hadn't said aloud. I could simply not go. In the morning, I could put the object in a drawer, take the train back, re-enroll. Sit in the organic chemistry lab with its clean, definite problems that had single correct answers. There would be a new girl eventually, someone already being shaped somewhere, becoming the next thing the system needed. I could let it be her problem. I sat with that longer than I wanted to admit. It had real texture. The labs, the library, the second-hand coat, Grandma's soup, the ordinary life on the other side of simply not going into the courtyard tomorrow morning. Then I put it down. The way you put down something that was never actually an option, but you had to stand in front of anyway, just to be sure. Inside the temple, Jessica was awake. I could hear it in the quality of the silence. The mantis came at midnight. Was it always going to end this way? I asked. It always ends the way the vessel chooses. And if we both choose? The door closes. A pause. This record ends, it sent. This door closes. What the world produces after, that is not within the closing. I looked at it. So it starts again. The world continues to produce what it produces. Eventually, yes, another record, another door, another line. I thought about that, the cold arithmetic of it. We weren't ending anything except this, paying this debt, closing this door, giving whatever came next the chance of a different start. It was less than I had been telling myself it was. It was also, somehow, more. I held the object, warm in my hands. The warmth of something that had been waiting a very long time to be used for the right purpose, even if the purpose was smaller than the vessel had imagined. Then we'll try, I said. The mantis sat with me a while longer, without urgency, without comfort, the way old things witness, present at the edge of everything, part of nothing. That was enough. Day 90, before dawn. The courtyard was dark when we took our places. We stood facing each other across the center of the old stone space, carved objects in our hands. The sky above still held the last of the night, not dark, not light, the in-between hour that belongs to neither. Then the insects came. All at once, not gradually. Complete and total and already in motion, up through cracks in the stone, down from the trees, out of every gap and hollow and dark space in the temple grounds. The air thickened with wings. The ground moved with small bodies. They formed a ring. The way beetles had formed a ring around me in the university garden on the first week of term, when I had thought it was strange and nothing more. But this ring was vast. Layer after layer spreading to the edges of the courtyard and beyond. Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, arranged with the precision of something that had been planning this for centuries. Not waiting for instruction, completing a shape. The shape they had always been building toward, the one that required two vessels at the center. Two women made into opposite halves of the same lock, both willing, both present, both choosing. They had been waiting for this since Hannah died in a courtyard just like this one. Jessica looked at me across the ring. She was afraid, the tension in her jaw, the object held too tight. Fear and action in the same body, the kind of courage that doesn't ask the fear to leave first. I crossed the courtyard and stood beside her. "Ready," I said. She let out a short breath, almost a laugh. "No," she said. "Yes." We held the objects out between us, end to end. They connected with a sound I felt in my back teeth, not a click, not a snap, something older than either. A resonance. The sound of two pieces that have been apart for centuries finding each other and understanding the searching is over. The ring tightened. The air pressure changed. My ears ached. Then the ground moved. Not an earthquake, something slower. The stones shifted beneath our feet, the earth exhaling after holding its breath for 300 years. The walls shed dust in long, thin curtains. And then the pressure hit. I had known it was coming. I had been moving toward it for 90 days. I thought knowing would prepare me. It did not prepare me. Cold water total, everywhere at once, no surface to swim toward. The accumulated weight of centuries, not abstract. Each one specific, each one real. A child told she was worthless by someone who should have known better. A woman silenced in a room full of people who chose not to see. A man destroyed quietly over years by someone who knew how to do it without witnesses. Every wrong that went unanswered, every debt unpaid. All of it, at once, threw me. My knees buckled. I locked my legs, forced myself upright, vision going white at the edges. I felt Hannah, the full uncompressed weight of a woman who died chained to a post with nowhere to put her rage except the ground. I felt Nkosi, the fire, the circle, the decades of holding. I felt every woman after them, each one specific, each one lost. And then, somewhere inside the flood, I felt Grandpa. Not his death, something worse. His laugh dissolved. The sound I had memorized over the phone, pressed into whatever was still mine, the wheeze at the end, the way it started small and grew past containment. It came up through the record, passed through me, and was gone. Not taken. Burned clean, like a photograph in a fire. I reached for it and found nothing. Smooth. Empty, sealed over. A sound came out of me that was not a word. Jessica's hand tightened around mine. "Hold on," she said through locked teeth, through her own flood. "Julia, hold on." Her voice was the only fixed point. For a moment, I didn't hold on. Not a choice. Something much older than choice. The animal part, the part that kept small things alive in dark places long before language existed, it fired. My hand loosened. My whole body tried to pull back, to close, to stop being the thing the flood moved through. 3 seconds, maybe less. Then I thought, the next girl. The one already being shaped somewhere. The one who didn't know yet. My hand tightened. I held on. I could not speak. I could not see. My legs were shaking so hard I couldn't understand why I was still standing. The wind in the courtyard had risen to something that wasn't weather, pressure from below. The thing that had been pressing for 300 years, finally finding the door open. The stones cracked. Small fractures first, spreading outward from where we stood like a map of everything breaking. The tree above groaned and dropped a branch. The walls shed dust in continuous streams. And then, deep inside the flood, near what felt like the bottom, I felt something shift. The weight began to thin. Not stop, thin, the way a storm exhausts itself, the way a river finally finds the sea. The debt does not disappear, it is paid. Every wound in the record, every ignored cruelty, every turned head, every deliberate blindness passing through us. Changed, received, finished. The far wall of the temple folded inward quietly, the way exhausted things collapse. The ring of insects held through all of it, the one still thing while everything around it gave way. Then it stopped. The silence was complete, the silence of a door that had been closed and would not open again. The ring of insects stilled, every single one, for one long moment that seemed to hold its breath. Then they dispersed, without urgency, without drama, into the stones, into the roots, into the dark spaces in the walls, returned to being what they actually were. Small creatures with small purposes and no further instructions from anyone. The objects in our hands had gone cold. Just wood, old, worn, ordinary. Whatever had lived in them was gone. Jessica's hand was still in mine. Her gray temples were still gray. Some things don't reverse, but her eyes were lighter, the specific lightness of someone who has been carrying something for a very long time and has finally been allowed to put it down. "Are you still you?" I asked. She considered it the way it deserved. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm more me than I've been in years." A pause. "I'm not sure yet if that's a good thing." I nodded. That seemed about right. Julia, present, fractured in several places, like a cup that's been repaired, it holds, but the lines of the break are part of it now. The memories that had been taken were not coming back. Some of them were simply gone. I would reconstruct what I could from photographs and letters and the patient testimony of people who had loved me. I put the carved object down on the broken stone. We stood in the early morning, and the birds started up somewhere beyond the walls, small and persistent and completely indifferent, and I let myself simply be in the sound of them. Epilogue. 3 months later. Grandma's kitchen smelled exactly the same. Soup and old wood and the clean smell of a place that has been loved continuously for a long time. She put a bowl in front of me, and we ate without talking, which was always how we'd eaten when we needed simply to be in the same room. The moth was gone from my window. The beetles in the campus garden moved in their own chaotic private ways. The ants had returned to their own concerns. A cockroach crossed my building corridor on a Tuesday morning. I looked at it. It looked at nothing, the way cockroaches look at nothing. My pulse went up. Old fear, small, manageable, the kind that can be rebuilt. Not the hollow absence I'd grown used to, the actual feeling. Mine. I stepped around it and went to class. I passed organic chemistry. Claire came to the university cafe the week my results arrived. We sat with 2 cups of tea and a silence with a lot of shape in it. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Not entirely," I said, "but I'm working on it." "Is it over?" I looked through the window at the campus outside. Students, leaves, pigeons, a bicycle, the ordinary, messy, alive world continuing without anyone holding a door. "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because nothing is watching anymore." She held her cup. The true answer was, the world would start again eventually. It always did, but not with this weight, not with this accumulation pressing against this particular door. Whatever came next would belong to a future I couldn't see and hadn't earned the right to worry about. I had decided that was enough. I thought it was enough. Something shifted between us, small and quiet, 2 people deciding without announcing it that they are going to try. "Okay," she said. "Okay," I said. Jessica found me on the campus steps before she transferred. The same steps where I'd sat after the library, after the cockroach, after the first ant found my shoe. "I'm sorry," she said. "For the coat photo, the roach girl thing, all of it. Not because of what happened to us after, because it was wrong before any of that." "I know." "That's not enough." "No, but it's a start." After a pause, "I've been trying to remember what I was thinking when I dropped that cockroach on your book." She looked at the pigeons. "I wasn't thinking anything. That's the whole answer." I looked at her. "I know," I said again, and meant it differently. She left. I watched her until she was small and then gone. Grandpa's photo was in my pocket. It had been there since the hospital. I took it out. His face caught mid-laugh. That huge, overwhelmed, bursting look. The man who had saved for years and told every neighbor and cried before he was through the door. I pressed my thumb against the photo. "I finished it," I said. "To him, to the morning, to whatever part of the world receives these things. I'm still here." The pigeon found what it was looking for. A student laughed at her phone. 2 people argued about a bus that had already left. The world being the world. For the first time in centuries, without anyone holding a door. I put the photo back, picked up my bag, stood up. A final note. I still cannot stand cockroaches. This is who I am. A girl who absorbed centuries of accumulated human cruelty, held a door from the inside until it closed permanently, and lost pieces of herself she will never fully recover, and who still makes an undignified noise when a cockroach crosses the kitchen floor. Grandma finds this deeply funny. She is correct, too. I am, for the record, afraid of cockroaches good at organic chemistry, still in possession of a second-hand coat that is slightly too large and that I will never throw away, missing a grandfather whose laugh I have been rebuilding from voice recordings, slowly reconstructing a friendship, occasionally sitting on steps in the morning and watching the world simply be. The insects move in their small, urgent ways and do not notice me. We are strangers now, as we were always supposed to be. The mantis has not come back. Whatever it watched for across all those months on that branch, it saw finished. It didn't stay for the aftermath because the aftermath was mine. That seems right. So I went home. The moths didn't follow. I walked through a door and nothing came with me. Just me, just Julia, just the ordinary weight of being one person in the world with nothing left to hold that wasn't mine. The morning was very quiet. I let it be. The end.
If you enjoyed this story, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves dark fantasy, and subscribe for more zombie, horror, and revenge stories. I'll see you in the next nightmare.